Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well, and I hope you had a good Christmas period. Yeah, it was quite nice at my end, but I haven't really been making any videos for a bit. But I thought I'd come back with a book haul since books were gifted and books have just been picked up and ended up being thrown in my general direction a fair bit over the last month or so, really. So I got a good pile here, a mix of stuff that I haven't really arranged in too much order, other than the two biggest ones are at the bottom. So we'll jump in, maybe with the smallest one to begin with, actually. And this is by Paul Morand, or Morand. Let's see who it's translated by. It's translated by Joanne Cameron, and it's called Venices, and it looks to be like a series of essays and sort of memoristic passages about Venice and about being there and it changing over his whole lifetime. And it just seemed like a very curious volume. I think quite an early Pushkin press by the looks of things. They've sort of changed their look a little bit since then. Let's have a look. Yeah, this is from 2002, so quite early in comparison to some of the ones I've picked up since starting the channel. And then next up, we've got some poetry, and we've got The Corsair by Lord Byron. My poetry collection is lacking in the Byron department, and I just picked this up and will do my best to try and get some more Byron at some point. But this is a narrative poem. I have sort of read what it's about, although it doesn't say here on the back. But it's sort of, I think, one of the sort of more adventure sort of poems that he was writing, which seemed to be very popular and very exciting. And then next up, we've got Anne Cloisenar, and it's called Time Slips. And if I'm understanding correctly, this may be a sort of selection. It might not, it might just be an actual collection. But it's a poet I hadn't really heard of, and her name really... oh, that's quite cool. We'll get to that in a bit. Her name stood out to me, and I saw it in the bookshop, and I got the book down, and it was down as a signed edition, and it was I don't know, it was like sort of twice the price I would have expected to pay for it. I didn't really want to do that with a poet I hadn't even heard of, so I put it back, and then I was in another part of the bookshop and found another copy of it, and so picked that up, and it was more the kind of price I was expecting. But she sounds interesting. She was born in Brussels in 1936, and then at a very young age, before the Second World War, moved to Britain, and so yeah, and then she studied at Trinity College Dublin, and I think she oh, okay, and she used to oh, there we go. So she used to teach creative writing at, in Cardiff, which is probably why there are a few of her books around in Cardiff where I picked this up. So that was interesting. But anyway, this came out in 1997. I'm guessing she's probably not with us anymore. I'll go find out. But anyway, I just found that there's a little slip in here that says something about typos in here. Most of the typos introduced after proofreading are insignificant, but these are not. And then there are a few there are a few poems then that yeah, where it's been corrected, and it looks like maybe she's done that herself. Maybe she noticed it herself, since this is actually still an inscribed copy. Yeah, this is actually still a signed copy. So they had two signed copies, but just one they were asking more money for whatever reason. And so I get the impression that this might have been an author copy that had been sent to her, and then she'd noticed the typos and had put them in, or and put the slip in to correct people when she was giving the books away to them, or selling them at events, or whatever she was doing with them. Or maybe it is something that the publisher put in, but it looks more like something she would have printed off herself. Anyway, moving on. This is a book that actually my wife Jasmine sort of randomly picked up and thought I might find interesting. And initially, I wasn't too sure. But the more I looked at the back and the more I looked at the table of contents, the more fascinating it actually seemed. And the book is called War: Four Christian Views, and it's essentially about different views towards wars that a Christian might have, and there's four positions that are sort of put out here. So there's biblical non-resistance, Christian pacifism, just war, and preventative war. And what's interesting when I was sort of looking at the table of contents and sort of looking at the sub headings for each section on non-resistance and pacifism and stuff, is that there are then within them responses to the other positions. And so it's really a book that's all talking, it's all the different text sections of the book are talking to each other, and each section is written by sort of people who seem to hold those positions. So it's sort of a debate within a book. And I think with maybe the first one, well, I suppose non-resistance, pacifism, just war, and preventative war are all they're all positions that most people have, towards warfare anyway, and so they don't necessarily need to have the Christian perspective to hold that position. But but nonetheless, it sounds really interesting, and sort of particularly when looking at history and things like the Crusades, or really anything. It's sort of fascinating maybe to have this in my back pocket, just as a little resource. And then we've got a history book. This is, I nearly dropped it. This is an Antonia Fraser book, and this is Warrior Queens, Boudica's Chariot, and it's a book of female leadership and really female leadership in war as well, sort of female warriors. So we've got Catherine the Great, Elizabeth I, Isabella of Spain, Rani, was that Jahanzi, formidable Queen Jinga of Angola, and Boudica, of course. And so it's a good. It's not actually as long as it looks. It's about 400 pages. Well, there's quite a lot of notes. So yeah, about 370 odd pages. But lots of pictures and stuff, and plenty of notes on female leaders throughout history, and particularly sort of female warriors. And then we've got another batch of poetry. We've got Matthew Sweeney's selected poems. The name just sort of, I don't know, rang a bell somewhere. I think I must have heard someone mentioning Matthew Sweeney somewhere. So I picked it up and I read a few poems before picking it up, and got the impression that it would be something I quite like. I think he's an Irish poet, born in Donegal, based in London, at least at the time this came out, back in, I want to say some point in the 2000s maybe. 2002. So quite a few books from the early 2000s actually. And then next one, some more poetry. We've got Concentric Circles by Yang Lian. Yang Lian is like a Chinese poet. It says here, born in Switzerland, the son of a diplomat, he grew up in Beijing and then started writing, um, and then started a literary journal when he was young. And now, or at least at the time of this book's publication, um, it's being published in exile in Scandinavia. And then his work was criticised officially in China in 1983 and was then banned in 1989 when he organised a, a memorial service for the dead of Tiananmen while he was in New Zealand. And then he's moved around a lot. When this came out, he was based in London, and he's won a lot of prizes. Yeah, sort of, a very interesting sort of globe-trotting history. And there was something I really quite liked in the just in the first line of the introduction, or I think it's a sort of an author's preface that he puts in here. And it's just the first sentence or so. When the Chinese translation of Ezra Pound's Peas and Cantos was published, I wrote a short essay for it entitled In the Timeless Air, in which I came to a sensational conclusion. Only with its Chinese translation was the cantos finally completed. And then, yeah, he'll probably go into whether there was any controversy around that. This book sort of looks to be, he says it's non-political, and it's essentially about what he calls deep reality, about how we understand reality through language. So we'll see what that means, since I think most contemporary poets tend to say that's what they're doing, and so we'll see whether we like it when he's doing it. Next up, and I should say there's quite a few translators, or is it 2 translators to this? So this is translated by Brian Holton and Agnes Hung Chon Chan. But yeah, this one I'm quite looking forward to trying that one. And this is another one that my wife was quite interested in, and it's something I've been meaning to get to at some point, and that's Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Aurora Leigh. So a great long epic poem of what was for her contemporary British life. Yeah, I've been meaning to get to it. It's one of those ones that I every now and then beat myself up a little bit about for not having read yet. So it's good to have an actual copy of it, since I think I've only got excerpts from it only excerpts in anthologies at the moment. Moving on to some happy stuff. We've got Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard is yet another author I've been meaning to get to at some point and just haven't. And for a long time, this has been the work that I felt like I wanted to start with and sort of dip my toes in with. If it's not working, I'll see if I can find something else by Kierkegaard to try. But that's the one I've been feeling pulled to over the last few years. And then we've got Family and Borgesia by Natalia Ginzburg. And again, Ginzburg, yet another author I've been wanting to try for quite a long time. And so, more or less on a whim, decided to try and pick something up by her. And this has sort of one novella, novelette, and a long short story. So Family takes up most of this volume. And that's about essentially a couple that split up, had lost a child, and sort of later have families, and then I think meet up again later in life. And then there's another story about a widow living with her brother-in-law, it sounds like a sort of a weird, a slightly unusual family dynamic, essentially, and of maybe what that does. And so it's very sort of, it says here, in both novellas, underneath the subtle stripped down prose and a rich cast of characters runs a seam of unhappiness and isolation. as Natalie Ginsburg explores the allure of memories and the complexity of family and relationships. So yeah, not always the kind of thing I go into. Um, However, it's the kind of thing I like to, or I would quite like to have around to try at some point. Back to some poetry, and we've got Wendell Berry. This is the piece of Wild Things, and I've been meaning to get to Berry at some point, and thought maybe I should start with his poetry. And this is one that comes up all the time, and a lot of people tend to quite like. And so I'm going to try this and see how it compares to someone like R.S. Thomas, who I have quite an affinity for. And then back to some fiction, back to another book that I've been meaning to get to for a while. And this is Julio Cortázar, and it's Hopscotch. Can't remember the first place I heard of Hopscotch, but again, it's just one of those books I've heard come up a lot. It's described as the first hypertext novel, so I'm guessing that sort of various points in the book are maybe referencing each other, but I understand it's also got multiple, is it multiple narrators or something like that? Anyway, I'll have a look and work it out. But again, I've not really been reading as much fiction, or at least I feel like even if I have been reading a fair bit of fiction, my focus hasn't been completely on it. And so yeah, I'm just trying to see what variety I can sort of circle myself with, and then I will just sort of pick at things and see what works, I think, and work out what I'm really in the mood for. And then moving on, this is one you may have already seen in one of my earlier videos from a couple of weeks ago, but I picked up an anthology of the writings of Simone Weil, just because some of the books I was reading a few weeks ago, she was coming up all the time, and I was really intrigued about just reading her stuff for myself, and working out what I thought of her and her ideas. And it turns out then I'd also, in an introduction to Jean-Paul Sartre's Nausea, when I read it a number of years ago, I underlined her name to sort of follow up on, and never had. So I did get around to it eventually, and I'm hoping to sort of start off the year with reading a bit from her, I think. Then next up, we've got something that could potentially go towards a future reading project. Two books that go together quite nicely. I picked up a complete poems, or the collected poems of W.B. Yeats. I've already got a very nice looking selected poems over on the shelf behind me, selected by Seamus Heaney, which I love. And I do love this cover, but I've been feeling for quite some time that I wanted I wanted a complete Yeats, or at least a more hearty collection of his work. So I got this collected poems that I think Steve Donahue a few weeks ago mentioned, and it was just around the time I picked this up, and he said sort of, it's a shame about the cover, yeah, it kind of is, but it will do the trick. But then at the same time, I also found this, A Reader's Guide to W.B. Yeats, and this is by John Unterrecker, put out by Thames and Hudson. I've got a similar guide for T.S. Eliot that I found helpful whenever I'm dipping in and out of Eliot. I often sort of dip in and out of that book at the same time. And so my idea is at some point in the near future to do a nice, nice long stretch where I'm concentrating on Yeats, and I'll have a good representation of all of his poetry, and a nice sort of overview of his work as well. from a sort of critical perspective. So we'll see if that works, because he's a poet I've enjoyed and admired for quite a long time. So we'll see how it goes. And then, yeah, another poet that I've just been meaning to get more by. I didn't feel like she was as nearly. She wasn't what's the word I'm looking for? She wasn't represented as much on the shelves as I'd like. And that's Christina Rossetti, and I've got Poems and Prose, and it seems to be a nice hearty selection of her poetry. At least I'm hoping it is. I'm just double checking. Yeah, we've got a good 250 pages of poetry there, and then we've got some of her fiction, and also some a little bit of prose and correspondence as well, which will be good. I didn't really, well, I was unsure as to whether she wrote that much fiction, so that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, we've got a few letters and I think sort of notes and things as well. So that's Poems and Prose by Christina Rossetti. And then 3 more to go, and I think these were Christmas presents. First up, again, one that I might try and get to quite early in the year, and it's by Verna Vinge, and it's Fire Upon the Deep, which is about a sort of a medieval sci-fi world. There are zones of thought, so there's these sort of super intelligent zones, and then the unthinking depths, and so it's some people fleeing something terrible and find themselves on this sort of harsh medieval planet. So it sounds good. It sounds like fun, and actually sounds like more of the thing fiction-wise I'd be a little more interested in reading in the near future. And then we've got, again, something I wasn't really aware of, but was just a really lovely random present. And this is The Baton and the Cross by Lucy Ash, a history of Russia's church from pagans to Putin. So a relatively short, but hopefully quite representative overview of Russian Orthodox Christianity, which I don't know a lot about. I've sort of got a rough idea of some elements of it from like Dermot McCulloch's Christianity, or I read Natasha's Dance by Orlando Figes as well, which went into it a little bit, but it'd be good to get a nice, more focused study of Russian Orthodoxy. And if you wanted to see it, there is a picture of Putin topless in here, which I did find quite funny. So there you go. This is Putin's baptism, I think. And I do find it a bit weird and a bit funny whenever he takes his top off. And then Early Modern Europe, an Oxford history. This is another random, but quite fun gift for Christmas, and it's edited by Johan Cameron, or Ayan Cameron. I'm just double checking. Is that the same? No, it's the same first name, but is it the actual same person who translated? It might be. I'll have to double check, but it's the same name as the person who translated this book by Paul Morand, which is it'd be a fun coincidence if it were the case. But anyway, this is Early Modern Europe, an Oxford overview of the period. It's still got a few sticky notes in the index for whoever had this before, for probably things to check out. What are they pointing at? Let's see. I think they're pointing at is that Plato and let's see, what are they? Thomas Wolsey, maybe. Yeah, Thomas Wolsey, and let's see, might have read it wrong the first time on the other side. Who's this? Maybe the printing press? Yeah, okay. Anyway, it's a period in history I find myself coming back to from time to time, a period of history that fascinates me. And I mean, it's starting from, I think, the sort of late 1400s through to, I think, the mid 18th century by the looks of things. Let's have a look. Yeah, through to 1789, where we're starting. Yeah, so from 1500 to 1789. Yeah, again, just a fun one to have, and to whether or not I dip into it or just read bits as they become relevant to other things that I'm reading, I'm not sure. I think it would be quite fun to read the whole thing all the way through, actually, maybe part way through next year for Historathon. But anyway, so that is the book haul. So I'll do a quick pyramid just to go through everything. So we've got Early Modern Europe, edited by Yeyan Cameron. I'll move that so we get the big the big ones together. Baton and the Cross by Lucy Ash. We've got Vernon Vince, A Fire Upon the Deep. We've got Christina Rossetti, Poems and Prose. We've got A Reader's Guide to W.B. Yeats. And then we've got the collected poems of W.B. Yeats. We've got Simone Weil, an anthology. We've got Julio Cortázar's Hopscotch. We've got Wendell Berry's The Piece of Wild Things. We've got Natalia Ginsburg, Family and Borgesia. We've got Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. We've got Aurora Leigh by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. We've got Concentric Circles by Yang Lian. Running out of space. We've got Matthew Sweeney's Selected Poems. We've got the Warrior Queens by Antonia Fraser. We've got 4 Christian Views on War, edited by Robert G. Klaus, with contributions by 4 other people. We've got Anne Cloysonar, Time Slips. We've got Lord Byron, The Corsairs. And then finally, we've got Venices by Paul Morand, and we'll find out if it's translated by the same person who edited the book right at the bottom. So there we go. That is my book haul. To sort of end off the year, I suppose, I will be hopefully following this up soon with some videos on books, favourite books of the year, books I want to read next year and things like that. But for now, I hope you're doing very well, and hopefully I'll see you before the year is over. Take care, and thanks for watching. Bye bye.